I'm Amanda Craig, 29 years old, a financial analyst in Syracuse, New York. I once believed that family love was worth every sacrifice. For years, I poured myself into supporting them, carrying their burdens, and putting my own dreams aside. I thought one day they would finally see me as someone who held our fractured family together, the daughter who never let them fall. So I planned my dad's birthday, every detail, flawless. I believed it would be the moment we healed. But right there at the party, my brother stood up, raised his glass, and sneered. "The best gift is you leaving forever." My mother smirked, her eyes cold. The room went silent. Those words cut like a knife, slicing through every ounce of loyalty and hope I had carried. I took a breath, lifted my glass, and said firmly, every word sharp and steady, "Okay, but remember this. Don't come to me when you need something." Their faces froze. I tossed my card to the waiter, split the bill, and walked out, the echo of my heels filling the glittering room like a final verdict that none of them could ignore. 2 days later, my phone lit up nonstop with their calls. I replied with only one line. "Forgot already. It's only been 48 hours. If you gave everything to your family only to be rejected, how would you respond? Share your honest thoughts in the comments below and let others know what you would do in my place." Growing up in Syracuse, New York, I was the kid who never quite measured up. My brother, 3 years older, was my mother's golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. She'd beam when he walked in, tossing his jacket on the couch while I was just the shadow trailing behind. My father lost his job at the factory when I was 12, and our world tilted. Bills stacked up like bricks, and the fridge was often half empty. By 14, I was babysitting neighbors, kids, and delivering newspapers before school, scraping together cash to keep us fed. Every dollar I earned went to groceries or utilities, but it was never enough to earn a smile from Mom. She'd say, "Your brother's got big dreams. He needs room to shine." His dreams apparently meant sneaking out to bet on card games and racking up debts he never paid. I'd come home from my shifts, hands raw from folding papers, only to hear my father sigh. "Just help out, Amanda. It's what families do." But Nolan, he'd stroll in flashing a grin, and Mom would slip him cash for emergencies. Emergencies like new sneakers or late-night poker. Once I found a debt collector's letter addressed to him, $5,000 owed to some shady casino. I paid it off with my savings, thinking it would keep us from sinking. Mom just shrugged, said Nolan was going through a phase. Dad stayed quiet, his eyes fixed on the TV. My efforts were invisible, like I was pouring water into a cracked bucket. They'd praise Nolan's charm, his bold ideas, while my sacrifices were just expected, like rent for existing in their house. I remember one Christmas working double shifts to buy gifts for everyone. I got Mom a scarf, Dad a toolbox, Nolan a leather wallet. They thanked me, sure, but Mom spent the evening gushing over Nolan's thoughtful card, a scribbled note he'd tossed together. I sat there forcing a smile, my chest tight. Another time, I overheard Mom telling a neighbor, "Nolan's our star. He'll make it big someday." I was in the next room, balancing our checkbook to cover the electric bill. It stung deeply, but I swallowed it, thinking one day they'd see me. Nolan's debts kept climbing, another $2,000 here, $3,000 there. I'd cover them, hoping it would keep the peace. Dad would pat my shoulder, say, "You're a good kid," but never once told Nolan to step up. School was my escape, but even there, I couldn't shake the weight. Teachers would ask why I looked exhausted, and I dodged the question. I was juggling homework, 2 jobs, and Nolan's messes. At 16, I found a stack of unpaid bills hidden in Mom's drawer. Phone, water, gas, all past due. I used my entire paycheck to clear them, eating instant noodles for weeks. Mom noticed, but instead of thanks, she said, "Don't tell your brother. He's got enough on his plate." His plate apparently was late-night bars and bad bets. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I kept working, kept paying, kept hoping they'd notice I was holding us together. Nolan's gambling wasn't a secret. Neighbors whispered about his habits, and I'd overhear Dad muttering about that boy's trouble, but they never stopped him. Mom would defend him, saying, "He's young, he'll figure it out." Meanwhile, I was the one figuring out how to keep the lights on. By my senior year, I had saved enough to think about college, but half went to another of Nolan's debts, a car loan he'd defaulted on. I didn't even get a thank you. Mom just said, "Family comes first, Amanda." I nodded, but inside I was starting to crack. Their favoritism wasn't just words, it was a wall I couldn't climb. When I started college at Syracuse University, I thought it was my ticket to proving I was enough. Studying financial analysis, I juggled classes with 2 part-time jobs, waitressing at a diner and tutoring high school kids in math, every paycheck I sent home to keep the family afloat. Dad's diagnosis came my freshman year, lung cancer, stage 3. The hospital bills hit like a freight train. $10,000 for the first round of chemo, then $20,000 more for scans and meds. I took on extra shifts, skipping sleep to cover those costs. Mom would call, her voice trembling, saying, "We need you, Amanda. Your father's fighting for his life." I believed her, thinking my sacrifices would finally make them see me. But Nolan's shadow still loomed. He was out of college, chasing get-rich schemes, and losing more at poker tables. His debts kept piling up, $3,000 to a bookie, another $4,000 for a busted loan. I paid them off, dipping into my student loans, telling myself it was for family. Mom never mentioned it. Instead, she'd sigh over the phone. "Nolan's trying so hard. He just needs a break." A break from what? Blowing money at casinos. I'd bite my tongue, wiring another $2,000 to cover his latest mess, hoping one day they'd notice my effort. Sophomore year, I was drowning. My grades slipped because I was working 30 hours a week while taking full-time classes. Dad's treatment costs kept climbing. Another $15,000 for radiation. I sold my old laptop and skipped meals to send money home. Mom called one night, her tone sharp. "You're doing well in school, Amanda. Don't let us down." Let them down. I was barely holding myself together. She'd follow up with stories of Nolan's potential, how he was this close to landing a big deal. I'd nod along, my stomach twisting, wondering why my sacrifices never measured up to his empty promises. Junior year, I took a third job, data entry for a small firm to keep up with Dad's bills. A hospital letter arrived, demanding $8,000 for unpaid scans. I drained my savings to cover it, eating ramen for a month. Mom sent a text. "Thanks, but don't tell Nolan. He's stressed enough." Stressed from what? Losing at blackjack? I wanted to confront her, but her voice would creep in, soft and pleading. "Family sticks together, Amanda." That guilt kept me tethered, like a rope I couldn't cut. I kept sending money, thinking love was something you earned through bank transfers. One spring, I visited home during break. Dad was frail, his cough echoing through the house. I spent hours researching his treatment options, calling doctors to negotiate payment plans. Nolan showed up sporting a new watch, bragging about some investment that went bust. I overheard Mom whispering to him, "You'll make it big. Don't worry about her." Her words burned, but I buried the hurt, focusing on Dad's next appointment. I paid another $5,000 for his meds, skipping my own textbook purchases. Mom hugged me, but it felt hollow, like she was checking a box. Senior year, I was exhausted, but still believed I could win them over. I aced my finals, landed an internship at a financial firm, and sent home every spare dollar. Another $12,000 for Dad's chemo and Nolan's latest debt, a $6,000 car repair he'd dodged. Mom called, her voice heavy. "You're our rock, Amanda. We'd be lost without you." But then she'd pivot, praising Nolan's hustle, how he was destined for greatness. I'd hang up, my chest tight, wondering when I'd be enough. My roommate noticed my stress, said I looked like I was carrying the world. I brushed it off, but deep down I knew she was right. I graduated with honors, thinking it had changed things. I'd paid off $35,000 in medical bills and $10,000 in Nolan's debts over 4 years. I waited for a thank you, a moment where they'd see me as more than a paycheck. But Mom's calls only grew more desperate, Nolan's messes bigger, and Dad's silence heavier. I clung to the hope that one day they'd value me the way I valued them. After graduation, I thought I'd finally belong, but their demands just kept coming. After college, I landed a job as a financial analyst in Syracuse, pulling in $60,000 a year. It was grueling. Long hours, endless spreadsheets, clients breathing down my neck, but it meant I could keep the family afloat. Every month, I wired $2,000 to Mom for Dad's medical bills, chemo, hospital stays, pain meds. The costs never stopped, eating up half my paycheck. Nolan's gambling debts were another black hole. He'd call, voice slick, promising to pay me back soon, then drop another $3,000 on a bad bet. I covered it, wiring the money to keep debt collectors off our doorstep. I told myself it was for Dad, to ease his stress, but deep down, I hoped they'd finally value me. I was pinching pennies, living in a cramped apartment, skipping dinners out to send more cash home. Last year alone, I sent $10,000 for Dad's treatments and $7,000 to bail Nolan out of a loan shark mess. Mom would text, "You're a lifesaver, Amanda." But her words felt like a pat on the head, not gratitude. Nolan never mentioned the money, just bragged about his latest business venture that went nowhere. I'd check my bank account, see it dwindling, and wonder why I was still trying to prove myself. When Dad's 60th birthday approached, I saw a chance to change things. I wanted to give him something special, something to show I was more than a walking ATM. I spent weeks planning a party at the Maplewood, a high-end restaurant in Syracuse known for its steak and wine. I booked a private room, picked a menu with Dad's favorite dishes, grilled salmon, roasted potatoes, and ordered a custom cake with Happy 60th Dad in blue icing. The cost was steep $2,000, but I didn't flinch. I also splurged on the real gift, a week-long trip to Hawaii for him and Mom. $15,000 for flights, a beachfront hotel, and tours. I imagined them smiling. Dad's tired face lighting up, Mom finally saying, "You did good, Amanda." I called Mom to share the plan. "Sounds nice," she said, her tone flat, like I'd told her about a grocery list. I pressed, explaining the Hawaii trip, how it give Dad a break from hospital visits. "That's a lot of money," she replied. "You sure you can afford it?" Her words stung sharply, but I brushed it off, thinking she was just worried. I asked if Nolan could help with the party, maybe pick up decorations. She laughed. "Oh, Nolan's busy with his projects. Don't bother him. Projects more like late-night poker." I swallowed my frustration, finalized the reservations, and sent her the menu to approve. No response. A week before the party, I visited home to check on Dad. He was weaker, his cough worse, but he managed to smile when I showed him the Hawaii itinerary. "Sounds like a dream," he said, then turned back to his TV. I waited for more. A thank you, a hug, but nothing came. Mom was in the kitchen scrolling her phone, barely glancing up. I mentioned the party details, hoping for excitement. "As long as it's not too much trouble," she said, her voice distant. I left feeling like I was shouting into a void. The day I booked the Hawaii tickets, Nolan called, asking for a quick loan of $4,000 to settle a business debt. The day I booked the Hawaii tickets, Nolan called, asking for a quick loan of $4,000 to settle a business debt. I hesitated, my savings already stretched thin from the party and Dad's bills. "Can't you handle it?" I asked. He laughed, sharp and mocking. "Come on, Amanda, you're the money machine." I wired the money, hating myself for it. Mom texted later, "Nolan's got big plans, don't stress him out." Big plans. I was funding his casino runs while planning Dad's party alone. I poured hours into the details, confirming the guest list, ordering flowers, double-checking the cake. I spent my evenings after work calling vendors, my weekends researching Hawaii resorts to ensure the trip was perfect. I told myself it would be worth it, that this party would finally show them I mattered. But Mom's indifference and Nolan's demands nodded at me. Why was I still chasing their approval? I pushed the thought aside, focusing on the party. I wanted one night where we felt like a real family, where my sacrifices weren't just expected, but seen. The night of Dad's birthday felt like my last chance to prove I belonged. I'd spent weeks planning the party at a high-end Syracuse restaurant. Every detail perfect. Reservations for 10, a custom cake with Dad's favorite chocolate frosting, and a gift I'd saved for months to afford, a $15,000 trip to Hawaii for him and Mom. I stood at the head of the table, heart pounding as the waiter poured wine. My family sat around me, Dad frail, but smiling faintly. Mom checking her phone. Nolan slouched with a smirk. A few cousins and aunts filled the seats, their chatter a low hum. I cleared my throat, raising my glass. "I want to celebrate Dad tonight," I said, voice steady. "I've got something special for you and Mom, a week in Hawaii. All expenses paid." I slid the envelope with the travel vouchers across the table, expecting gasps, maybe hugs. Instead, Nolan snorted, his glass clinking against the table. "The best gift is you leaving forever," he said, his voice dripping with venom. The words stung like acid, freezing the room. Evelyn, Mom, didn't even flinch. She smirked, her eyes glinting with amusement, like I was some joke she'd heard before. Dad stared at his plate, silent, his fork still. The cousins shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. Years of paying bills, covering Nolan's debts, and holding them together flashed through my mind. I'd given everything, my savings, my time, my dreams, and this was what I got. A sneer and a laugh. I could have crumbled, but something snapped inside me. I set my glass down, my hand steady despite the fire in my chest. "Okay," I said, locking eyes with Nolan, "but don't call me when you need something." I turned to Evelyn, her smirk fading. "That goes for you, too." My voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a decade's worth of resentment. I wasn't their bank anymore. I was done. I pulled out my credit card, handed it to the waiter, and said, "Split the bill evenly. I'm not covering this." Nolan's jaw dropped, and Evelyn's eyes widened, but I didn't wait for their protests. I grabbed my coat, walked out, and let the door swing shut behind me. My heels clicked on the pavement, each step lighter than the last. In the car, I sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I'd spent years chasing their approval, thinking love was something you bought with sacrifice. But that night, I saw the truth. They'd never see me as anything but a means to an end. I'd paid thousands for Dad's chemo, cleared Nolan's gambling debts, and drained my savings for their survival. And for what? A cruel jab and a smirk, I started the engine, my resolve hardening. I wasn't just walking away from the party. I was walking away from their hold on me. The restaurant's glow faded in my rearview mirror as I drove through Syracuse's quiet streets. I thought about the Hawaii trip, how I'd spent months budgeting for it, hoping it would bring us closer. Instead, it exposed the fracture I'd ignored for years. Nolan's words echoed, "But they didn't break me. They freed me. I'd given them everything, over $50,000 in medical bills and debts. Countless sleepless nights and pieces of my own future, no more. I'd paid my dues, and I wasn't signing up for another round of their ingratitude." Back at my apartment, I turned off my phone, ignoring the first ping of a text from Evelyn. I knew what was coming. Excuses, maybe apologies, probably demands, but I was done playing their game. I poured a glass of wine, sat on my couch, and felt a strange calm settle over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying their weight. I was just me, Amanda, and that was enough. 2 days after I walked out of Dad's birthday party, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Evelyn's number flashed first, her voicemail, a desperate plea. "Amanda, we're out of options. The hospital's demanding $12,000. I picked up her second call, cutting her off. "Forgot already. It's only been 48 hours, I said, my voice cold as steel. She stammered, but I hung up and blocked her number. Nolan's text came next, begging for $3,000 to clear a bad bet. I blocked him too. Dad's call followed, his voice barely audible. "We need you, Amanda." My thumb hovered, then pressed block. I'd spent years, over $60,000 on their medical bills and Nolan's debts. That chapter was over. Later that day, a letter arrived. Evelyn's handwriting on the envelope. She wrote about Dad's worsening condition, how they couldn't afford his meds without me. A line about my childhood, helping her bake cookies at 10, tugged at my heart, but it was a calculated move. I tore the letter in half, my hands shaking. I wasn't their lifeline anymore. I'd given everything, saving, sleep, dreams, to keep them afloat. No more. At work, a new challenge hit me. My boss emailed about a financial conference in Chicago, a chance to represent our firm and pitch to major clients. It was a high-stakes opportunity, but one client had just pulled out, threatening my team's biggest deal. I dove into damage control, crunching numbers to salvage the contract. Brian, my colleague and friend, stayed late with me, sorting through spreadsheets. "You've got this," he said, not as a pep talk, but as a fact. Working side by side, I felt a spark of confidence, not because he said so, but because I was proving it. I didn't need their approval to know my worth. That night, I couldn't sleep, Evelyn's letter echoing in my mind. I grabbed a notebook and started writing, not a journal, but a short story about a woman breaking free from chains she'd forged herself. The words poured out raw and real. I'd never written fiction before, but it felt like unlocking a door inside me. The next day, I signed up for a creative writing workshop in Syracuse, a small step towards something new. The instructor, a quiet woman named Lena, read my piece and said, "You've got a voice." It wasn't praise. I'd sought it. It was proof I could create something for myself. The conference prep consumed my days. I rebuilt the client pitch, pulling all-nighters to refine every slide. Brian helped, not by preaching, but by challenging my ideas, making them sharper. We laughed over takeout at 2 a.m., the stress easing with every joke. I realized I wasn't just fighting for the deal. I was fighting for me. A week later, another call came from a withheld number. I didn't answer, but the voicemail was Evelyn's voice, softer, begging for just one last payment for Dad's chemo. I deleted it, my resolve like iron. Their desperation was real, but it wasn't my burden. I'd paid enough, financially, emotionally, mentally. I blocked the number, my chest lighter with each step away from their chaos. Outside work, I kept exploring. The writing workshop became a haven where I crafted stories about freedom, loss, and starting over. One evening, I shared a piece with the group, my voice steady as they nodded, some even clapping. It wasn't about their approval, it was about me finding my own. I started running in the mornings, not with a group, but alone, the rhythm of my steps clearing my mind. Each run was a reminder I was enough without their weight. The conference loomed closer, and I felt ready, not just for the pitch, but for the life I was building. I wasn't running from them, I was running toward myself. Their calls, their letters, their guilt trips, they couldn't touch me anymore. I was Amanda, not their savior, and that was enough. Months later, my life was mine again. While their world crumbled, I'd thrown myself into work, leading a major client pitch that landed our firm $1 million account. My nights were spent in a Syracuse art studio where I'd started painting, bold strokes of color that felt like reclaiming pieces of myself. But their chaos wasn't done chasing me. A colleague sent me a screenshot of Nolan's latest post on a local forum. Amanda Craig ditched her dying dad for a fancy job. He claimed I'd stolen family savings and left them to rot. The lies spread, with strangers piling on, calling me heartless. It stung like a whip, not because I cared about their judgment, but because Nolan's betrayal was so brazen, splashed across the internet for all to see. I could have fought back, posted the truth about the $60,000 I'd spent on their bills, Dad's chemo, Nolan's gambling debts, but that would have meant stepping back into their mud. Instead, I reported the post and blocked Nolan's profile. I wasn't playing his game. A few days later, Melissa called, her voice heavy. We met at a diner, the smell of greasy fries in the air. She didn't sugarcoat it. Nolan had been fired from his dealership job after missing shifts, too busy betting on cards. He owed $8,000 to a bookie with no way to pay. Evelyn and Dad were sinking under $25,000 in medical debt, their phone cut off by creditors. They're blaming you, Melissa said, stirring her coffee. Evelyn says you abandoned them. I leaned back, my jaw tight. They abandoned themselves, I said. Melissa didn't argue. She'd seen their favoritism my whole life, always siding with Nolan. I'd given them everything, my savings, my time, my energy. I wasn't going back. Thanks for telling me, I told her, but I'm done cleaning up their mess. She nodded, a quiet respect in her eyes. I paid for our coffees and left, my steps firm. Work was my refuge. The client pitch had earned me a bonus, and my boss hinted at a promotion to team lead. I spent late nights refining investment strategies, my laptop glowing in my apartment. Every spreadsheet I built, every deal I closed was proof I didn't need their approval to shine. I started saving for a trip, maybe Italy, somewhere I'd never been. The money I'd once sent home, $15,000 for Dad's hospital stays, $6,000 for Nolan's loans, now went to my own dreams. It felt like breathing again. Painting became my outlet. I'd enrolled in a community art class, expecting to dabble. But the first time I mixed crimson and gold on a canvas, I was hooked. My paintings weren't masterpieces, just raw, messy expressions of freedom. One piece, a swirl of blues and grays, captured the storm I'd left behind. My instructor, a guy named Sam, called it powerful. I didn't need his praise, but it felt good to create something that was mine alone. I signed up for an art show at the community center, my first chance to share my work publicly. Brian kept me grounded. We grabbed beers one night at a bar downtown, neon lights buzzing overhead. He'd seen Nolan's posts and laughed them off. "Guy's digging his own grave," he said, clinking his glass against mine. I smiled, grateful for his no-nonsense take. We didn't dwell on it. Instead, we talked about my art show, his latest hiking trip, anything but them. Brian didn't try to fix me. He just reminded me I was already whole. That was enough. Melissa texted a week later with more news. Evelyn had pawned her wedding ring to cover a fraction of the bills, but it barely helped. Dad's health was fading, and Nolan was dodging creditors, his promises of big wins falling apart. A twinge of guilt hit me, but it faded fast. I'd carried their weight for too long. My savings drained, my dreams shelved. Their choices weren't my fault. I kept my focus on my own path. Work, painting, new horizons. At the art show, my canvas drew a small crowd. A stranger bought it for $50. Not much, but it felt like a victory. I was building a life piece by piece without their shadows. A year after that night, I was living for myself, and their struggles were no longer my burden. I'd been promoted to team lead at the firm, managing a portfolio that brought in record profits. My evenings were spent in a Syracuse art studio, where painting had become my way of stitching together a life I'd chosen. But their collapse kept unfolding. Melissa called with the latest. Nolan had hit rock bottom. A shady investment scam mixed with his gambling wiped out his savings every last dime. He'd lost his car, his apartment, everything. Evelyn and Dad had sold their house to cover $30,000 in medical debt, moving into a cramped one-bedroom apartment. "It's grim," Melissa said, her voice low. "They're barely scraping by." The news stung like a spark, not because I wanted to fix it, but because it was proof of how far they'd fallen without me. I'd spent years funneling money their way, $70,000 for Dad's treatments, Nolan's endless bets. Now their choices had caught up. I didn't gloat, but I didn't waver either. "They'll figure it out," I told Melissa over the phone, my tone steady. She paused, then said, "You sound different, stronger." I smiled. I was. Work was my proving ground. The promotion came with a corner office and a team of 5, all looking to me for direction. I led strategy meetings, my voice clear as I outlined investment plans. A client emailed me after a deal, calling my work game-changing. It wasn't just the praise, it was knowing I'd earned it. I started a new savings account, not for their emergencies, but for my own future. I dreamed of a house, maybe a trip to Paris. The money I'd once sent home, $20,000 for Dad's surgeries, $8,000 for Nolan's debts, now built my own foundation. Painting gave me freedom. I'd stuck with the art classes, moving from abstracts to portraits. My latest piece, a self-portrait in sharp greens and golds, felt like a mirror of who I was becoming. My instructor, Sam, pushed me to submit it to a regional exhibition. "It's bold," he said, "like you." I spent nights perfecting the details, each brush stroke a declaration of independence. The exhibition accepted my work, and seeing my painting on display, surrounded by strangers who saw beauty in it, filled me with quiet pride. I wasn't painting for their applause. I was painting for me, for Brian stayed a constant in my life. We met for coffee one Saturday, the shop buzzing with chatter. He'd heard about Nolan's downfall through a mutual friend. "Guy's his own worst enemy," Brian said, shaking his head. I nodded, sipping my latte. We didn't linger on their mess. Our talk shifted to my promotion, my art, his new side hustle fixing up old bikes. Brian didn't need to tell me I was enough. His friendship showed me. We laughed about a bad movie we'd both seen, and I realized how light I felt, unburdened by their expectations. Melissa sent a follow-up text a week later. Evelyn was working odd jobs, cleaning houses to make rent. Dad's health was stable, but fragile, the apartment too small for his equipment. Nolan was couch surfing, dodging debt collectors after the scam took his last dollar. A flicker of pity crossed my mind, but it didn't take root. I'd spent a decade tying my worth to their needs, every paycheck, every sacrifice measured by their demands. Now I saw the truth. My value wasn't theirs to define. I deleted the text and moved on. The exhibition was a turning point. My self-portrait sold for $200. Not a fortune, but a symbol of my growth. I stood in the gallery, watching people admire my work, and felt a certainty I'd never known. I wasn't the girl who'd begged for their love with every dollar. I was Amanda, whole on my own terms. Work kept me sharp. Painting kept me free, and every choice I made was mine. Their struggles, Nolan's ruin, Evelyn and Dad's hardship, were theirs to carry. I'd built a life without their chains. That night, I sat in my apartment, sketching a new painting. It wasn't about them or the past. It was about the woman I'd become, the one who'd learned to own her worth. I didn't need their approval to know I was enough.